during my recovery from back surgery, I overheard my teenage son unknowingly reveal a life-shattering secret. I had been following my doctor's orders, staying medicated, and doing my best to get better, when one day he had a phone conversation with his friend that I couldn't ignore. Without realizing I was awake, my son casually mentioned that once my insurance settlement came through, his mom would be divorcing me, and they would be moving to California. He even said she was already in touch with realtors out there. I kept my eyes closed and pretended to be asleep, but inside I felt crushed. My heart sank as he talked about how his mom was fed up with my issues and how she had been planning this for a while. He mentioned how she was looking at homes in San Diego and had already talked to her sister about a job in California. I didn't let on that I had heard everything. Instead, I kept on with the meds and followed the doctor's orders, while Erica left increasingly frantic voicemails. I felt trapped, unable to defend myself, with the reality of my future being torn apart. I had no idea what to do, and with 43 voicemail messages from Erica, the panic in her voice was clear. The back injury, which happened when I fell off scaffolding 3 months ago, left me with 2 herniated discs and nerve damage that left my left leg numb. The pain was unbearable, and I had to undergo surgery involving screws and rods. Recovery would take months, and I couldn't work for a while, which was stressful, especially with finances already tight. Erica and I have been fighting about money for years. Her desire for a better life, bigger houses, nicer cars, and vacations I couldn't afford had always been a point of contention. I made some bad investments years ago that cost us a lot, and she had never really forgiven me for that. When the accident happened, Erica stepped up, helping with doctor visits and other basic tasks in the beginning, but something fell off. I tried to push the feeling aside, blaming it on the stress of our financial situation and my injury. But then one afternoon, after about 3 weeks of recovery, I overheard my son's conversation, and everything changed. I realized Erica had been planning this for some time. She had been looking for a way out, making plans for a fresh start in California without me. After that moment, I began paying much closer attention to everything: her phone calls, her actions, and her behavior. I even found evidence of her plans in our shared tablet search history, where she had been researching how to transfer the house deed after divorce and how to move to California. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I turned to my friend Silas, who had gone through a tough divorce a few years earlier. He told me to document everything and get a good lawyer. I followed his advice and contacted an attorney named Elliot, who specialized in cases like mine. Elliot gave me a clear plan. Don't confront Erica yet. Start keeping track of everything: conversations, time spent away from me, and anything related to money or future plans. He also advised me to change the beneficiary on my life insurance and make sure the insurance settlement check required both our signatures. In the past week, I've been following Elliot's advice, even though it's been incredibly difficult. Erica continues to help me with my recovery, but every time she does, I have to pretend I don't know what's going on. The worst part is acting like everything is normal while she's still carrying on with her plans. Yesterday, I had Silas help me gather some financial documents from the home office. That's when I found proof of Erica's secret plans: credit card statements I didn't know existed, brochures about California homes hidden in her drawer, and even a draft email to her sister about starting fresh once I'm out of the picture. Today, I received a call from the insurance adjuster. My settlement is final: $675,000. The amount that was supposed to help us as I recover is now a ticking time bomb. I've done everything I can protect myself, opening a separate account and securing all financial documents. Now, the hard part begins, waiting for the right moment. I discovered multiple copies of documents where beneficiaries had been altered. I even managed to record Everett talking about their California plans. I did this by pretending to want a video chat with my brother and accidentally left the recording on. Meanwhile, Eric has been getting more and more anxious about the settlement, constantly asking if I've heard anything new and encouraging me to push for updates. She keeps talking about how much better we'll feel once we're financially secure again. I'm trembling as I type this on my phone, not from the pain of the medication, but from the deep, building rage inside me. 19 years together, a son we raised. Countless nights I worked overtime to give her everything she asked for, and this is how it ends? Tomorrow, the settlement letter arrives, and Elliot advises me to keep acting normal for a few more days while he finalizes our plan. But I'm not sure how much longer I can keep this up. Watching her check the mail multiple times today, seeing the greed in her eyes when she asks about the insurance money. It's almost too much to bear. The painkillers don't touch this kind of pain. Nothing does. I'll update you when things hit the fan. It's about to get ugly, and I feel like a wounded animal, just waiting for the right moment to strike. Update 1. I didn't expect my first post to blow up like this. Thanks for all the messages and advice. I've read everything, even though I couldn't respond. The past 2 weeks have been a total mess. So let me update you on what happened. The settlement check arrived exactly on time. $675,000, made out of both of us and requiring both our signatures. Watching Erica's face when she brought in the mail that day was something else. She tried to play it cool, but her hands were shaking as she handed me the envelope. Part of me wanted to rip it open and scream everything I knew in her face, but Elliot had drilled it into me. Stick to the plan. Keep emotions out of it. So I did what any unsuspecting husband would do. I smiled, opened it slowly, and acted surprised and relieved. Her first words weren't congratulations or anything normal. No, she immediately asked, "How soon can we deposit this?" That should have been the first sign something was off, but by that point, I wasn't keeping track of the red flags anymore. I suggested we sit down that evening to discuss how to allocate the money, medical bills, savings, maybe setting some aside for Everett's college fund. She agreed too quickly, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. What she didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this. Remember that separate account Elliot had me set up? Well, I had already moved most of our accessible savings, about $112,000, into it, not from the joint savings account, but one in just my name. I left enough in our regular accounts, so she wouldn't notice anything missing. I also made copies of all our financial records from the past 5 years. Credit card statements, bank records, investments, retirement funds. And when Elliot's team went through them, we discovered Erica had opened 3 credit cards I didn't know about in the last 2 years, racking up nearly $27,000 in debt. The charges were for hotels I'd never stayed at, expensive restaurants on days I was working overtime, and online purchases sent to her sister Maya's address. But the real kicker? The weekend before the settlement check arrived, I had Silas drive me to the bank, while Erica was at her book club, which I now seriously doubt even existed. I had a conversation with the bank manager, an older guy with reading glasses who'd seen it all. I explained my situation, and he set up a protocol where any withdrawal over $1,000 from our joint accounts would trigger an automatic text alert to me. We also flagged our account for special attention, so the settlement check couldn't be deposited without additional verification. Back to the night the check arrived. We sat at the kitchen table after Everett went upstairs. I was still moving slow, still in pain, but managing, tried to stay clear-headed for what was about to unfold. Erica had her laptop open, showing me a spreadsheet with her proposed allocation of the money, medical bills, house repairs, and then a new line I hadn't expected, a fresh start fund for $300,000. When I asked her what that was, she gave me a tight smile and said it was for emergencies and opportunities. I pressed further, asking if she'd gotten an updated quote on the house repairs and how much was left for medical bills. Her answer started getting a little too quick, and she seemed increasingly uncomfortable. Then I asked a question that caught her off guard. "Have you been looking at real estate anywhere?" Her face shifted through several emotions, surprise, denial, calculation, and then forced confusion. She asked why I'd asked such a thing. So I shrugged and casually mentioned that with this kind of money, we could maybe finally afford that vacation property she had always talked about. The relief on her face was hard to watch. She actually patted my hand like I was a good puppy, saying maybe we should wait until I was fully recovered before making any big decisions. I agreed, saying that made sense, then pretended I was tired and needed to lie down. She helped me to bed, brought my evening meds, kissed my forehead, and went back downstairs. As soon as she left, I texted Elliot. She took the bait, and we moved to phase 2. The next morning, I asked Erica if she could deposit the check for me since climbing stairs was still difficult. She practically ran to the bank. 30 minutes later, I got the alert on my phone. Deposit pending, special authorization required. Then my phone rang. It was the bank manager calling to verify the deposit. I confirmed I was aware of the deposit, but asked how long the hold would be. He gave the answer we'd rehearsed. 3 to 5 business days, with funds released in stages. I made sure Erica could hear my side of the conversation. Watching her face fall as the news sank and was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. That night, she started drinking earlier than usual. By dinner, she was on her 3rd glass of wine and getting sloppy. She started complaining about how unfair it was that the bank was controlling our money, about how we'd waited long enough, and how she'd been carrying everything while I was laid up. Everett, clearly uncomfortable, echoed some of her complaints. I felt bad for the kid. He had no idea he'd just blown her whole plan. After dinner, I asked Everett to help me to the living room, while Erica cleaned up. Once we were alone, I casually asked him if everything was okay at school, then mentioned that I'd been thinking about taking a family trip once I was more mobile. Maybe somewhere warm, like Florida or Arizona. The kid looked as though I'd just punched him. He started mumbling about not making long-term plans and focusing on my recovery first, then suddenly came up with an excuse about homework and bolted upstairs. It wasn't part of my plan to break my own child's trust in his mother, but was becoming unavoidable collateral damage. The next few days were tense. The bank released the first installment of the settlement funds, $100,000, into our joint account. Erica immediately transferred $50,000 into her personal account before I could notice. Little did she know, I got an alert the second it happened. I didn't react, though. Elliot had told me it was better to let her think she was getting away with it for now, that we could take it back later. While Erica was out, I started making calls. Insurance, medical billing, Everett school. I changed passwords, updated contact details, and added notes to accounts, ensuring that any major changes would require my direct verbal confirmation. I was building a wall, brick by brick, around the remains of my life. 5 days after the deposit, Erica grew restless about the remaining funds. She called the bank twice, getting the same answer both times, that the releases were scheduled according to policy for large deposits. That night, she started a fight. It began with complaint about the takeout food, escalated to me not trying hard enough in physical therapy, and somehow morphed into how I'd always held her back, never supported her dreams, forcing her to stay in this dump of a town when she could have had so much more. 19 years of resentment spilled out her, all while I sat there, still wearing the back brace, struggling to tie my own shoes some days. I didn't argue or defend myself. I just let her rant, nodded occasionally, and stayed silent. This made her angrier. She wanted to fight, wanted me to give her a justification. When she finally ran out of steam, I asked one simple question. Is there something you want to tell me about California? The silence that followed was deafening. Her face went from red with anger to pale white in an instant. She stammered something about not knowing what I meant. I didn't press it. I just said I was tired and needed my medication. She stormed off to the bedroom, and I stayed on the recliner, where I'd been sleeping since the surgery. Neither of us got much sleep that night. The next morning, she was sweet as sugar, making my favorite breakfast, bringing me coffee just how I liked it, apologizing for losing her temper the night before, and blaming it on stress and worry about my recovery. I nodded and accepted her apology, playing the role of the understanding husband she thought I still was. That afternoon, while she was out grocery shopping, I had Silas come over with a locksmith to change the codes on the garage door opener and get new keys for all the exterior doors. Silas helped me move some important documents and irreplaceable items to his place for safekeeping. Photo albums, my dad's watch, a few things I couldn't bear to lose as she decided to go scorched earth when the next chunk of settlement money hit the account. This time, when the next deposit of $200,000 hit, Erica didn't immediately transfer any of it into her account. Instead, she suggested we go together to meet with a financial advisor she'd found, claiming he had great reviews online and specialized in managing windfalls. I agreed, but told her I preferred to use someone from our bank who was already familiar with our situation. She pushed back hard, saying her guy had more experience with personal injury settlements. I was sure he did. He probably also knew exactly what paperwork to have me sign that would give her access to everything. The day before our supposed meeting with her financial advisor, Elliot called. He had the divorce papers ready. We'd filed them in our county that morning, and she was going to be served the next day. Everything was in place. Temporary orders for the house, for Everett, and for the settlement funds. That evening, Erica announced she had to visit her sister Maya for the weekend. Something urgent had come up with Maya's kid, and she needed help. She'd be leaving the next morning. Sure, I thought, totally believable. The sister who was planning to move to California with her suddenly needed help on the exact day we were supposed to meet with a financial advisor. I told her to go ahead. Family comes first, and asked if Everett would be staying with me or going with her. She hesitated, then said he should stay with me to keep an eye on me. Translation: to report back on what I was doing. She packed that night, kept coming in to check if I needed anything, if I had enough medication, if I knew the emergency number. Playing concerned wife right until the end. The next morning, she kissed me goodbye, full of worried looks and promises to call when she arrived at Maya's. I watched from the window as she loaded a suspiciously large suitcase into her car and drove away. 1 hour later, the process server delivered the divorce papers to her at a rest stop 50 miles south. Elliot had put a tracker on her car while she was busy packing. Completely legal, as the car was in both our names. 20 minutes after that, my phone exploded with notifications. First, a text, "What the hell is this?" Then, calls one after another. I didn't answer. By evening, there were 17 missed calls, and more were coming. The voicemails ranged from confused to angry, to tearfully apologetic to threatening. I listened to each one, and forwarded copies to Elliot, trying to stay calm. Everett came downstairs, looking confused and upset. He said his mom had been calling him nonstop, saying I was trying to steal their future and punish her for wanting to be happy, that he needed to convince me to call off the attack. I sat him down, moving carefully with my still healing back, and told him I knew about the California plans. I had known for weeks. His face crumpled, like he was a little boy again, caught stealing cookies. He started crying, saying he never meant to hurt me, that Mom said it would be better for everyone. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, hugging that kid and telling him none of this was his fault, that adults make their own messes and kids shouldn't have to clean them up. That night, the calls from Erica reached 28 and counting. Each voicemail grew more desperate than the last. The final one, before I turn off my phone for the night: "Porter, please, we can work this out. I made a mistake. I was just exploring options. Please call me back. I'm coming home tomorrow. We need to talk." To be continued with what happened when she came home to find the locks changed and half of the settlement money legally protected by court order. Update. First off, holy crap, guys. The support for my last post has been unreal. I didn't expect so many people to get invested in my marriage train wreck. Some of you predicted what happened next with scary accuracy. Here's how it all went down. The chaos truly began when Erica, under the guise of visiting her sister, unexpectedly served me with divorce papers. What followed were 28 increasingly frantic voicemails, each more unhinged than the last. It didn't stop there. The next morning, I woke to 15 missed calls and a series of texts that swung wildly from desperate pleas to "I love you" to thinly veiled threats, urging me to call her back. All the signs of someone who was definitely not panicking about her carefully laid plans falling apart. Everett, the poor kid, was clearly struggling. He kept checking his phone nervously, putting it down as though it were scalding his hands. When I asked him if he wanted to talk about his mom's calls, he mumbled something about needing to finish a history project. I couldn't blame him. Being stuck between two warring parents is a nightmare I never wanted him to experience. By noon, I decided to pick up one of Erica's calls, a decision I quickly regretted. The moment I answered, she began a rambling tirade of tearful apologies mixed with barely disguised threats. She kept repeating phrases like, "We need to talk in person," and "You don't understand what you're doing," and, "Of course, this isn't what it looks like." I let her talk, just letting her spin in circles until she finally wore herself out. Once she fell silent, I told her that she could come over to talk, but the locks had been changed for security reasons, and she should text when she arrived so Everett could let her in. There was a long pause before she asked if I was serious. I confirmed I was. She hung up. 3 hours later, the doorbell rang. But it wasn't the normal, polite ring you'd expect. It was frantic, like someone trying to force their way in. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, over and over without stopping. I was in the kitchen when it started, nearly dropping my coffee in surprise. I grabbed my walker and made my way to the front window. There she was, standing on the porch with a suitcase in hand, frantically hammering the doorbell. Her hair was a mess, her makeup smeared, far from the composed woman who had left the day before. I signaled to Everett, who reluctantly went to open the door. The second it cracked open, Erica pushed past him and stormed inside, launching into this dramatic speech about how worried she had been, how the divorce papers were just a misunderstanding, and how he needed to call Elliot to fix everything. Meanwhile, Everett stood there, his face a mix of confusion and embarrassment, watching his mother try to gaslight both of us. I suggested we all sit down and talk things through like adults. Erica seemed relieved, probably thinking I was softening. But once we were all settled, I took out my phone, opened the voice memo app, and pressed play. The recording was crystal clear. It was a conversation between Everett and his friend, where Everett said, "Mom says once Dad's insurance settlement comes through, she's divorcing him, and we're moving to California. She's already talking to realtors there." Watching the blood drain from Erica's face was like watching the air leave a balloon. Her eyes flicked between Everett and me, clearly calculating her next move. The denials came next. She claimed Everett had misunderstood, that she was just exploring options, and that it was just talk. She insisted she never meant to leave. She even said that she was looking at California for all of us as a family. When that didn't work, she shifted tactics, bringing up my past mistakes, failed investments, working late, a flirty text from a female coworker 5 years ago, which she'd never let go. I let her rant, sitting there in my back brace and nodding occasionally, waiting for her to run out of steam. When she did, I pulled out a folder Elliot had prepared. Inside were credit card statements showing hotel charges for days I was working, restaurant receipts from places that cost more than I earned in a day, realtor emails that she thought she deleted but we had recovered from our shared computer's cloud backup, and phone records showing hours of calls to numbers in the San Diego area. Each piece of paper I set down was another nail in the coffin of our marriage. By the time I was done, Erica wasn't even trying to deny it anymore. Instead, she turned to Everett, making her final attempt to manipulate him. "What about our son?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You're tearing apart his family over a misunderstanding." That's when Everett finally spoke. He asked her why she had told him. They were definitely moving to California after the divorce. He asked why she had already researched his new school and made him promise not to tell me anything. It turned out the kid had been carrying that burden for months, not just since my surgery. Erica had been floating her plans long before. Summer gradually normalized the idea of leaving me behind, telling me it would be better for everyone, that I'd be fine on my own. The settlement money would take care of Dad while they started fresh. She mentioned that I should listen to my own son, who had been slowly turning against me, a process orchestrated by his mother, while I was working tirelessly to support our family. I don't have words to describe that feeling. It's like having the ground ripped out from under you while you're still standing. Erica tried to interrupt him, but Everett kept going. He asked why she said Dad doesn't really love us, that he just loves working and his stupid friends. He wanted to know why she told him that if he mentioned anything to me, it would cause another financial crisis, like when I lost our savings. She had no answers, just tears and weak attempts to reframe everything as misunderstandings or poor communication. Eventually, she shifted to anger, accusing me of manipulating our son, turning him against her, and orchestrating the entire situation as a punishment. She said she'd fight me for every penny, for full custody, for the house, for everything. I simply nodded and told her she should probably talk to a lawyer, because mine was very, very good. She stormed out, saying she'd be staying with a friend and would be back for her things. She slammed the door so hard that a picture fell off the wall, our wedding photo. The next 48 hours were marked by 43 voicemails. They came in waves, with different strategies in each batch. The first wave, voicemails 1 to 9, were tearful apologies and promises to change. She said she still loved me, that we could work through it, that California had just been a fantasy she entertained when things got hard. The second wave, voicemails 10 to 17, were filled with anger and accusations. She claimed I had trapped her, that I was controlling the money to punish her, that I'd never supported or respected her dreams. The third wave, voicemails 18 to 26, were negotiations and bargaining. She offered to go to counseling, suggested a trial separation instead of a divorce, and proposed different ways to split the settlement that would still give her enough to start over. The fourth wave, voicemails 27 to 35, were threats and manipulation. She said she'd tell everyone about my pain medication dependency, even though I followed my doctor's prescription. She threatened to make sure Everett knew I was keeping him from his mother, that she'd make my life hell if I didn't answer my phone. The final wave, voicemails 36 to 43, were filled with complete desperation. She sobbed so hard I could barely understand her, begging me just to talk to her, saying she didn't know what she'd do without me. The last one was just breathing, with occasional sniffles for nearly 2 minutes, before she hung up. I saved every single voicemail, forwarding them all to Elliot, and playing a few of the worst ones for Silas when he came over to help me adjust my back brace, which had been digging into my side. Meanwhile, Everett was struggling, barely eating, spending most of his time in his room. When he did come downstairs, he'd just sit silently, scrolling through his phone or staring at the TV without really watching it. On the third day after Erica left, I heard him crying in his room around midnight. It took me forever to get upstairs with my walker, but I made it. I found him curled up on his bed, clutching his phone. He'd been looking at old family photos on Instagram. We had a long talk that night. Well, I mostly listened. He poured out everything. How confused he was, how his mom had made California sound like this amazing fresh start, how excited he was about living near the beach, but also terrified of leaving his friends and me behind. The worst part was when he asked if the divorce was his fault for letting me overhear that phone call, like he had somehow created this entire situation by slipping up once. I told him the truth, that his mom and I had been building toward this moment for years, probably before he was old enough to notice. Marriages don't break because of one moment or one mistake. They break from thousands of tiny fractures that nobody bothers to repair until the whole thing is too damaged to save. I'm not sure if that helped him or not, but he seemed a little calmer afterward. He asked if he could stay home from school the next day, and I said yes. We ended up binge-watching some stupid zombie show on Netflix and ordering pizza for lunch, just a normal day in our very not normal lives. When Erica finally came back for her things 5 days later, she brought reinforcements. Her sister Maya and some guy I had never seen before, who turned out to be her actual boyfriend. Plot twist. Apparently, California dreaming wasn't just about escaping me, but about shacking up with this dude she'd been seeing for 7 months. Maya wouldn't even look me in the eye as they packed up Erica's clothes and personal items. She just muttered about how everyone was overreacting and that nobody was perfect. The boyfriend stayed in the car, which was probably smart, considering the murderous looks Everett was giving him through the window. The weirdest moment came when Erica was grabbing stuff from the bathroom. She paused, looked at me hobbling around with my walker, and asked if I was taking my medication properly, as if she still had any right to ask. I had every right to be concerned about my well-being after Erica planned to take the settlement money and leave with another man. I just stood there, staring at her until she looked away, then went back to packing. After they left, Everett asked the question I had been dreading. Do I have to go with Mom? I didn't have a clear answer at that moment. Custody arrangements were still being worked out. I told him that, as a 16-year-old, his opinion would matter to the court. The relief was obvious on his face. He said that he still loved his mom, but couldn't imagine living with her and the guy she was with. He needed time to process everything. 2 weeks later, we had our first mediation session. I had prepared myself well, laying out exactly what our position was. I would keep the house, which needed a new roof and was only half paid off. The settlement money would be divided, with a larger portion going to me to cover ongoing medical expenses and lost income. We would have joint legal custody of Everett, but primary physical custody would be mine, considering his age and his express wishes. Erica would be responsible for her secret credit card debt. Her lawyer, a slick guy in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly disability check, countered with demands for half of everything, including the settlement plus spousal support, claiming her career had been sacrificed for the family. The mediator, Grace, a tired-looking woman who had probably seen countless couples just like us, kept steering the conversation back to what was fair and reasonable. After 4 grueling hours, we had the framework of an agreement. It wasn't perfect for either of us, but it was something we could both accept. Erica would receive $175,000 from the settlement, and I would keep the house and the remaining $500,000 for medical expenses, living costs, and Everett's future college expenses. She would get visitation with Everett based on his comfort level and mutual agreement. Afterward, Erica tried to talk to me privately in the parking lot. She wanted to know if we could ever be friends again for Everett's sake. I told her maybe someday, but not today, not tomorrow, maybe not for years. Trust doesn't get rebuilt overnight, especially when someone plans to dismantle your life while you're literally flat on your back. She nodded like she understood, but I doubted she did. Some people never truly grasp the damage they cause until it happens to them. The divorce was finalized last week. No dramatic courtroom showdown, just paperwork and signatures. 19 years of marriage ended with notary stamp and a folder of documents. Everett is doing better. He's been seeing a counselor who specializes in helping kids cope with divorce. He's been spending more time with his friends again, and even had dinner with his mom last weekend. He came home quiet but not devastated, which I count as progress. As for me, my back is healing slowly. I go to physical therapy 3 times a week, and it's gradually rebuilding what the surgery repaired. I still need a walker for longer distances, but I can move around the house with just a cane now. Small victories. Silas comes by regularly to help with household tasks I can't manage. Some friends who disappeared during my recovery have started checking in now that the divorce drama is public knowledge. Funny how people work. The settlement money is being carefully invested, according to financial advisor my bank recommended. We're not living large by any means, but we're secure. The roof gets fixed next month. Everett's college fund is set up, and medical bills are paid. Sometimes at night, when the house is quiet and the pain meds aren't quite cutting it, I scroll through old photos on my phone. I wonder how I miss the signs, and if there was a moment when I could have changed the direction we were heading. But mostly, I'm focused on rebuilding, not the marriage that's gone for good, but rebuilding my body, my relationship with my son, and my sense of who I am outside of being Erica's husband. It's slow work, like constructing a house, 1 brick at a time. Some days the progress is barely visible. Some days it feels like the whole thing might collapse. But the foundation is solid now, not built on lies or secret plans, but on honest, everyday effort to build something that will last. Yesterday, Everett asked if we could repaint his room. He said he'd wanted to change it from blue to gray for years, but his mom always said no. It's such a small thing, but it felt huge. Making changes to the house that are just for us, not to please anyone else. We're going to tackle the project this weekend. I've already bought the paint and supplies. I'll do what I can from a chair, and he'll handle the ladder work. We'll build something new together, 1 wall at a time. And so, I end this chapter of my life. Thanks for listening, Reddit. Your comments and support got me through some dark nights. Maybe someday I'll post an update about meeting someone new or some other major life change. But for now, we're just taking it 1 day at a time, building our new normal brick by brick. As for the 43 voicemails from Erica, they're saved in a folder labeled Reminder, not to fuel anger or resentment, but to remember that sometimes the hardest choices are the right ones. And that panic only sets in when someone realizes they've lost control of the situation they thought they could control completely. Turns out that's a lesson worth remembering, especially when your back is against the wall.